If you're just joining us on France 24, we've just been listening to a speech by the French President Emmanuel Macron in which he announced a new voluntary military service program for young people. We're going to look really at and analyze that speech now with our French politics editor, Marc Perelman. Hi, Marc.
Hello.
This speech, this announcement was largely expected. It's come in the wake of a lot of warnings from not only the president, but other French officials about the threat of Russia, in particular in Europe. Can you run us by some of the things that might have stood out to you in that speech and also tell us more about the motivations of this move?
Right. It was a rather short speech. Knowing the standards of Emmanuel Macron, who likes to go on and on, he even started it earlier than expected, which is also rather unusual for the president. That being said, yes, no major surprises. He announces that they will be starting in the summer of 2026, a new voluntary but purely military national service. He said, we're not going back to mandatory service. This was the case before it was suspended back in 1996 by then President Jacques Chirac. He says, that's not what we want. That's not what our military needs. However, given the new threats, he didn't elaborate on the threats, but obviously Russia comes to mind, and he's already said that war is back in Europe and we have to make sure we address this new threat. He said that this would be a voluntary. The modalities will be known at the beginning of next year, which is in a few weeks. And the idea is to start already next summer. He said the target was to begin with 2,000, 3,000, get up to 10,000, and the objective would be 50,000 by 2035. By then, Emmanuel Macron will be gone as a president, but that's the idea. He said those people would be between 18 and 19. Again, this would be on a voluntary basis, and they would serve only on French soil. Why this? Because when the Joint Chief of Staff, as you referred to, said a few days ago that the French would need to accept that their children might die fighting for their country, this created a shockwave. Probably this was meant to prepare for the announcement today. But the president, in an interview just a couple of days ago, tried to clarify, say, we're not going to send our youngsters to die in Ukraine or to fight in Ukraine. The idea is, and he repeated this today, that they would serve only on French territory, sometimes the overseas territory, but belonging to France. So he said that this was important. He also said that this would require additional costs, because obviously you have to house those youngsters. You have to make sure that there are officers that will tend to them. And he gave a figure of an additional effort of 2 billion euros for the next pluriannual military budget, which will run from 2026 to 2030, 2 billion euros, given that the government is already asking for 6.5 billion euros for the military, an increase of 6.5 million euros for the military in the next budget, given that they're cutting expenses on all other areas. It's going to be obviously controversial. But the president, if you look at the polls, is on safe ground, because the polls show that the French, when asked, are in favor of a new form of military service, not the old form where you had to go to military service, but on a voluntary basis, and this is what he proposed today.
Right. Does that mean that the political climate is very favorable to this announcement? He also said that there needs to be some kind of desire to serve. Do you think people are going to raise their hands in numbers to serve here?
Well, the numbers are quite small. Again, 3,000 to begin with. Then the idea is to reach 10,000 by 2030. Given that we're having 600,000 or so people reaching the age of 18, if you do just a percentage, it's not a lot. And obviously, given that some of them don't really know what they're going to do, what they're going to study, maybe 10 months of service where you get a uniform, you get pay, probably not a lot, is something that might attract at least, if not a sizable number of young people, at least enough to reach the objective of the president.
All right, Marc Perelman, thank you very much for breaking that down for us.